how to write fast code in Ruby on Rails. So when it comes to writing efficient code, it largely depends on the specific problem that you are trying to solve. However, there are few techniques that you can use while working with ActiveRecord, Rails, and Ruby to improve the speed of your code. In this particular section of the talk, we will be discussing how you can optimize ActiveRecord, how you can optimize the framework Rails, and lastly, we will be discussing how to optimize Ruby. So let's start with optimizing ActiveRecord. So ActiveRecord is the default ORM for Rails, which interacts with your database by generating and executing SQL. But there are tons of ways to poorly write large database queries using ActiveRecord, so which can result in like unresponsive apps. So first thing is to optimize these queries. In order to do that, it is very important to know that when a query is actually executed. For example, in Rails, a query can be executed lazily, or you can load data eagerly. So for example, if you try to load a user from database, it won't load any of its associated records, as you guys can see on your screen. But when you try to access the association, it will only load the association at that particular point in time. So knowing when a query will be executed will help you write them well. For example, in this code, it's not really obvious that an SQL insert query is being run and executed to basically add a comment in the post, but this code is appending a comment to a blog post and automatically saving it to the database. So I think with experience and carefully reading the documentation, you will be able to find these kinds of gotchas, and you will start writing optimized AR queries, which will really help in writing applications that runs fast. The next thing you want to do is only select what you need. Uh, what I mean by that is in ActiveRecord by default, whenever you query something, ActiveRecord selects all the columns associated with that object. Instead, what you can do is you can leverage select and plug methods, which can return only what you need. For example, here in this blog example, if I want to get IDs of all the blog posts, I can either use select or plug. Select will actually return active record relation that you can chain further queries off of, and the plug will only return raw array of data. So select only what you need. It will use way less memory and will be much faster. Next thing you want to do is to ignore the query caching. Do you know that ActiveRecord will only query database once for the same SQL query within the same request? Cool, right? This is what it looks like in action. For example, if I want to query a blog with ID 1, it will load it from database. Any more queries to load the same exact thing will ActiveRecord will load it from cache. Cool, right? But you should forget that query caching exists. Query caching is supposed to be the last line of defense against redundant SQL executions. While this is useful, depending on query cache is bad idea. Query caching is stored in a memory which can be very limited, and its persistence is very short-lived, or the cache can be disabled, so which can lead to inefficient queries and slow apps. So don't rely on query caching. Forget that it actually exists. So yeah, that will really help to make your apps faster. Next thing you want to look at is avoid querying unindexed columns. So at scale, these queries can time out and cause problems. So index columns you want to query, but beware of the right blocks. What happens is whenever you try to index something, index a large table, for example, database often locks rights to that particular table, which means large tables can be write blocked for a really long time, which is not very good for production usage. So to avoid that, you can either use concurrent indexing support in latest version of MySQL or Postgres, or you can use a very handy tool by Shopify, which is called Large Hadron Migrator, which works for MySQL only, but it really works. Um, yeah, let's zoom out a bit. And beside ActiveRecord, Rails has many other moving parts. Let's discuss some techniques to optimize Rails in general.